Stephanie has started to let folks into our webinar this afternoon, and we'll get started here in just a little bit. Started just a few minutes before noon here. Allow people to get set up and logged in. How's it looking, Stephanie? Are we getting everybody in okay?
Yep, everybody's getting in all right.
We'll just wait probably a minute or so. I think it's just a minute after, so I think we'll get started here. I would like to welcome everybody today for the grants webinar to learn more about our grant programs and go apply. But first, I'd like you to introduce to you Stephanie Harmon. Stephanie, you want to introduce yourself, I guess, and just tell folks a little bit about you?
I'm Stephanie Harmon. I started with the Community Foundation back in September, right?
Yeah.
So I will have been here for about 6 months here coming up. I am the program assistant with Ginger, and I do, well, about everything she asked me to do. Learning, learning a lot. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and we're excited to have you too, Stephanie. So today we'll get started. And again, welcome. Thank you for joining us today, taking time out of your busy lives to join this webinar. What we hope to accomplish today is that you will have a better understanding of the eligibility of our programs, how each grant program differs a little bit from each other, and then probably almost most important is our new grant portal called Go Apply. Stephanie's going to be watching the chat as we go today, and if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in there, and at the end we'll circle back around to those. So we're going to start by just talking about eligibility. What does that look like for nonprofits? We're looking at organizations who are verified, charitable organizations, looking at those tax ID numbers, making sure you're verified with the IRS. These are 501c3 organizations. We also can make grants to units of government, schools, and churches. And then every once in a while, there might be that nonprofit that does not have their 501c3 status, and they still need to apply and wish to. And so we offer fiscal sponsorship for those orgs. If you're interested in that and have some additional questions about that, just feel free to reach out. So those groups that aren't eligible are private businesses and individuals. Any one of the nonprofit organizations listed on the IRS master file who may be on the auto revocation list. We keep close tabs on that. We will consider organizations that aren't on the IRS master list right now, but they do know that they will be in the future, and they have that determination letter. So that is also something that you can provide to us. We're going to jump right into our South Dakota Fund, which has been around as long as the South Dakota Community Foundation has been. We've been making grants in the categories of culture and economic development education, financial literacy, health, and human services. So any one of those categories are a great fit for our South Dakota Fund. These are really program and project related expenses that a nonprofit is going to be applying for. We see these grants ranging anywhere between 2,000 and 20,000. We also offer multi-year funding if that's something that might be a good fit for you. It'll be considered by the grant making committee. With our South Dakota Fund, we are going to require that you have some matching dollars. So we're not able to fund more than half of the total project cost. And so you might be asking yourself, where can those other matching dollars come from? So perhaps other donors, those other grants that you're applying for, um, individual donors that may be providing you some gifts that are going to go towards your project. And then, of course, any fundraisers that you're going to be having. And then in kind, a lot of times with nonprofit organizations and projects that they're doing, there's somebody within the community that wants to offer their in-kind labor. So that is something we can consider as well. Our South Dakota Fund is rolling. What that means is we're constantly open and receiving what we call letter of inquiries to make sure you're eligible to apply. And then we move on to an application. I'll talk about that timeline in the next slide. But all of the projects do need to take place in South Dakota. We're not able to make grants that aren't going to be benefiting those that live here. And also financial literacy programs may request more funding than are up to $20,000. So keep that in mind if a financial literacy project is something you're going to be applying for. So that timeline, what does that look like for a South Dakota Fund? So once you submit that letter of inquiry, like I said, it is on a rolling basis. So be thinking about what works best for your organization. And when you're ready to do so, you can move forward with submitting that letter of inquiry. It can take up to 15 working days to hear back on the decision. Once you do get notification from the South Dakota Community Foundation that your letter of inquiries move forward, now you have 60 days to submit that application. So be keeping that in mind when you're thinking about submitting that letter of inquiry. There are some hard deadlines, especially for you. So once you get the go ahead, you only have that 60 days. And then again, once you submit the application, it can take our grant making committee up to 90 days or approximately around that time frame to make their decision. So let's talk a little bit about some of the recipients that we might see and fund from our South Dakota Fund. Friends of the Opera House in Watertown, the Goss Opera House in Watertown. They have been hosting several culture events and concerts within the area and surrounding area. Even the space can be rented for other private events that are going on. But the funding for this particular grant, the 18,500, was really to support their Passport to the Arts program. That program engages students in the arts and challenging these students to participate in various programs to earn these passport stamps. They have worked with other funders. They've conducted several fundraisers, and then they have a large group of volunteers that help them get to their goal. So a financial literacy example of a South Dakota fund is Junior Achievement of South Dakota. So Junior Achievement was looking to have a JA Finance Park in South Dakota, and they are impacting more than 54 students across our state. They have a hands-on simulation that provides an environment for students to understand how income affects their choices and allows them to practice making general budgeting decisions. And so the funding that they receive from us They received $100,000 out of that financial literacy bucket that we have, which was $50,000 a year over 2 years, really went to help support um, getting this simulator and getting it to move across the state of South Dakota. Again, they had a lot of donors. They have a lot of volunteers, as you might imagine, in all of the schools across the state. And then in each community, they have that support there as well. The last grant recipient I'm going to speak about is South Dakota Starbase. They received an education grant in the amount of $10,000. And what that is, the South Dakota Starbase serve at-risk students with STEM learning activities that they can provide to them. Each year, Starbase impacts roughly 3,600 students across our state. They have a great group of fifth graders that they are reaching across the state as well. And with this particular grant, and able to get this STEM learning activities to these students, what they're doing is they have a mobile program, and the funding that they received from us actually helped with that transportation need that they had. So that's also an option if you're looking for something in that area. That concludes our South Dakota Fund section, and we're going to move on now to what is called our Nonprofit Savings Account Grant Program. And these grants are really for nonprofit organizations that are looking to start an endowment with the South Dakota Community Foundation. They're challenge grants. If an organization can raise up to $80,000 within a 2-year time frame, they'll receive $20,000 from the South Dakota Community Foundation. That becomes part of an endowment with the South Dakota Community Foundation. That nonprofit then receives 4.5% each year of the earnings off of that fund to go back to their nonprofit to assist them in any way that they may see. They also, this grant program is also a rolling deadline, so we're accepting those applications at any time throughout the year. The next program I'm going to talk about is called our Community Savings Account. And so you'll see on that map, we have 89 communities that are part of our Community Savings Account program. They're all over our state. If you go to our website and you want to learn more about each one of these, you can click on the local foundation grants, scroll down, and you'll see a map there listed. And then you can click on each one of these communities, and it'll give you more information about their grant programs. Because each one of these CSAs, they have their own local leaders. They make all the decisions at the local level. They have their own grant programs, their own grant amounts. And so it's another option for you as a nonprofit within your community. You can apply to the South Dakota Community Foundation, and you could apply to this local CSA within your community. And if you're an organization that's doing work, not just within one community, maybe you're in many counties across the state, take a look here. There may be some options for you to apply to a CSA across the state. So last year there was $2.4 million that was awarded just from our CSA grant program to 656 other nonprofits and charitable organizations. That's outside of our South Dakota Fund. So keep that in mind for future reference. I'm going to switch gears now to what is called our Beyond Idea grant program. And a lot of you may remember that we went into partnership with the Bush Foundation 3 years ago. We were able to design, create, come up with the application, the criteria, all the things with the Beyond Idea grant program. The Bush Foundation awards us $1.2 million a year to re-grant to all of you. And so these are really community-based problem-solving grants. These grants can range anywhere between $5,000 and $100,000 each year. Now, because these are problem-solving grants, we want you to be thinking about, what does that look like for us? You've identified a need within your community. You have worked with several key stakeholders, and now you're ready to start developing your idea. And how are you going to problem solve that? We see those grants going up to $50,000. But let's say you're a little bit farther along. You've done the development of this, and now you really want to test and see if your program or your idea of how to problem solve is going to work. And so we see testing and maybe even spreading something that you've already created up to $100,000. With our Beyond Idea grant, we will consider multi-year funding as well. Unlike the South Dakota Fund, there is no match required with our Beyond Idea grant program. Again, these projects must be based in South Dakota. So we're about halfway through our partnership with the Bush Foundation and for this particular contract that we have. And this is a 1.2 million a year for each year. So in 2025, there will be 1.2 million awarded. So what are some other important considerations when you're thinking about the Beyond Idea grant program? These are very different from our South Dakota Fund. These aren't typically your everyday, your program and project related. It's really hoping that you can step outside of what you're doing on a daily basis and be thinking about, what is that problem within our community? Who do we need to have at the table to help us figure this out? We want these grants to be able to help you develop, test, and spread your ideas. And you, as nonprofit leaders, we also want to inspire, equip you, and connect leaders with other leaders. We can see these as planning or implementation grants. And we're really going to be looking at, what that impact in your community looks like. So be keeping all of these things in mind as you consider applying for a Beyond Idea grant program. I'd like you to be thinking also about this important criteria for BIG. We're really looking at that community problem solving. And how has your idea going to address the problem in an innovative and a collaborative way? So I've mentioned key stakeholders, I mentioned partners. Who are they? What is their role? And how are they going to achieve with you in a collaborative way this outcome that you hope to have within your community? We also want to make sure that it's realistic and likely to succeed. We want you to be thinking bigger about what that might look like if you take a step back and really think about how you could address a problem within your community. I mentioned again these key stakeholders. Who are they? Identify them. Tell us, how are they going to be involved? So we're going to talk a little bit about what we aren't going to fund. So it's not going to be solely those operating costs. Like I said, it's going to be very different from our South Dakota Fund, which are more program and project related. So if that's what you have, you probably want to have a better fit with South Dakota Fund. We're not also going to be funding any loans or construction. As I mentioned, this has been a 6-year partnership with the Bush Foundation. We're halfway through. So between 2022 and 24, we received 396 applications. We awarded 41 of those at $3.6 million. So as you can see at looking at those numbers, this becomes highly competitive. So it becomes very important when you're thinking about applying to these grant programs that you've really done your homework. You can look at our application online. You can start writing that offline until it is open. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but there's a lot of things that you can do before that grant program opens. And we really hope that you can do your homework ahead of time. Be thinking about that program. Who do you need to have at the table with you to help address these community needs that you're seeing? As I mentioned, 1.2 million will be available this year for funding. I wanted to share with you a couple of examples of our big recipients. So that first one you're seeing there is the Family Connection Center. They're based out of Rapid City. And what they were able to do is, as they were seeing there was a huge issue within their community of youth needing emergency shelter. So they created that space, and it provides overnight housing for these youth between 11 p.m. in the evening until 8 a.m. the next morning. It really does offer a safe alternative for these youth, and it's also aimed at reducing exposure to additional risks that they may have by not having this shelter. They received $100,000 for that last year, and they've been making strides and creating all kinds of new impact with these youth since that time. A second one is a South Dakota Native Home Ownership Coalition based out of Kyle, South Dakota. They have a construction insurance program that's really designed to provide practical training and to address the workforce gap in residential construction. So this is to expand to a new county within one of the reservations. And so they received $73,000 for that program that they identified. Midwest Street Medicine, they're based out of Sioux Falls. They're hitting the streets. They are providing direct healthcare services to the unhoused and manage communicable diseases, prevent outbreaks, and ensure better health outcomes for this vulnerable group. So like I said, they have identified that this group of people they really needed to meet them where they were at. And so they are a group of doctors and nurses and other health staff that are out there addressing the needs. They received $90,000 for this last year. And then the Helpline Center. So Helpline Center is a statewide organization that many of you may uh, be aware of. And they have the 211, they have the 988. But this particular grant was to implement the transition to success collective impact model. So this is evidence-based that coordinates care across social determinants of health to treat poverty, really aiming to help families move out of poverty and promote health equity. They received $95,000 to move this idea and help solve that problem in 24 as well. You're probably asking yourself now, well, when do we get to apply for the Beyond Idea Grant Program? So we're going to have that open June 1st through July 31st. So 2 months. Probably the most important thing to jot down, put in your calendar, put it on your fridge, put it on your desk, put this deadline everywhere so you don't miss it. It is at noon Central Time, 11 Mountain Time. We're that state, where we have two time zones. So it's so important to make sure you don't miss that, because the way the Beyond Idea Grant Program works is, once that timeline comes, that door is shut. We cannot open it. And I hate to tell nonprofit organizations how sorry I am, but I cannot help you. So apply early, get in there. You can come in and out as many times as you want. So be thinking about that. or you can be writing your application in another place, but apply early and let's not wait until the 31st at noon Central Time, 11 Mountain Time. And then the announcement will make that on November 28th, if not before. So that's a timeline for our Beyond Idea grant program. I want to talk a little bit about our foundation intermediary partners. So, as I mentioned, we are in partnership with the Bush Foundation for South Dakota. We are that partner, but they are also in partnership with other states right around us. So the Minnesota partner is the St. Paul, Minnesota Foundation. You may live close to one of these bordering states, and we wanted to make you aware that they also are offering these grants. Now, we don't want you to necessarily apply to both of us, but maybe make a determination. Should I be applying to Minnesota, North Dakota? What does that look like? So as I mentioned, Minnesota also is conducting the Minnesota Community Ideas Grant Program. And then they also have the Bush Prize. All of us in these other states that are partners also operate the Bush Prize. So then we move on to the Native Nation partner. That's called the Good Relatives Collaborative. So they are administering the Good Relatives Collaborative Grant Program, and they are in all three states. So they are making grants in this community solving space in Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. So maybe that's a good fit for you. If you're not sure how to reach out to them, you certainly can Google them, but please feel free to reach out. We can give you that contact information. The North Dakota partner is Strengthen ND, and their grant program is called Creative Community Solutions Grant Program. And then, of course, us in South Dakota administering the Beyond Idea Grant Program. So, as I mentioned, these are our partners with the Bush Foundation, operating these grants in each one of these states, and having the Good Relatives Collaborative focused on all of the Native nations. Now, I'd also like to clarify, just because Native Nations is addressing the Native Nations does not mean or exclude you from applying to South Dakota Community Foundation if you are one of those nonprofit organizations. So keep that in mind. We're not saying you cannot apply to us. So, the Bush Foundation partnership is fantastic. And we also want you to know that you can apply to them as well. So even though you're applying to the South Dakota Community Foundation for a big program, maybe you're looking for something that's a little bit larger. So you can apply directly to the Bush Foundation. They have a community innovation grant program that is open. They also have several other grant programs that when you enter into their website, you can see a listing of all of those. But that community innovation grant program still exists. That's the partnership that we had with the Bush Foundation for about 10, 13 years. We had the partnership for 13 and offered grants for about 10 years. And so those were all in the community innovation space. So they still have that. Their applications are accepted year round. The great thing about them is they have no cap. So whatever it is that you might be dreaming about, that's a great place for you to look into if you're looking for something larger. Also on that website, you can see a place where you can connect with the Bush Foundation and set up a meeting with them. That brings me to our Bush Prize South Dakota, again in partnership with the Bush Foundation. So the Bush Prize was administered and created by the Bush Foundation. For about 10 years, they did administer that program. Then they decided to take a pause for a couple of years and determine that, we think it would be better if we move the Bush Prize into each one of our states. So that's why you now see it called the Bush Prize South Dakota. We are entering into our third year with this Bush Prize, and what is it? You're asking yourself. Well, it's really an award to celebrate organizations that are highly valued within their communities. And then we look at that track record, really wondering, what with you as an organization, what's that track record of transformational impact looking like by your organization creating solutions to these problems that you're seeing? So these eligible organizations really must have that track record of successful community problem solving spanning at least 3 to 5 years. So um, if you are a newer nonprofit organization, it's great for you to start dreaming and planning for when you are at least 3 years old. And then maybe up to 5 years old is what we want to see as you are thinking about applying to the Bush Prize. So a little bit different than the last 2 years. We were awarding up to $500,000, which was 25% of an organization's operating budget. This year, we're only going to be offering $250,000, but it's going to two organizations. So um, it's wonderful. There's going to be two organizations each year going forward that will honor um, nonprofit organizations, and they will receive an award of $250,000. So what can you use that money for? We really hope that it can, take you to that next level or build up your reserves or whatever it is that you're doing to assist your nonprofit organization to move forward. We want to celebrate that work with you. The eligibility component of that is much like our South Dakota Fund and BIG. We're looking at those verified nonprofit and charitable organizations. The tax ID number does need to be verified with the IRS, and that's a 501c3 organization. Also making grants to those units of government, schools, and churches. And a verified organization may serve as a fiscal sponsor for other initiatives. Looks just a little bit different with the Bush Prize, and that's clearly laid out in the application. So not only do nonprofit organizations need to be located in South Dakota or one of the 9 native nations that share the same geography, but the work also has to be completed here. And you're wondering, maybe previous Bush Prize winners, can I apply again? Well, you can apply after 10 years. So that's a little bit on the eligibility side of things, and we'll go right into the criteria. So when we're looking at the Bush Prize and our selection committee, that's made up of individuals from all over the state of South Dakota come together. These are some of the questions they're going to be thinking about. So does this organization have a pattern of transformational impact? Does the organization have a history of creative solutions? So when you're thinking about that history, we talked about the 3 to 5 years. That's something that you want to be thinking about. Is the organization creative in community problem solving and strong in financial, in strong leadership and cultural innovation? And then looking at that governance and finance. These are all things that you should be asking yourself and visiting with your other staff members. Do you think this is a good fit for you? And then over time, as we continue to make Bush Prize awards to these honorees, we really want to have a full diversity of South Dakota, and it includes a variety of organization sizes, the communities that they serve, the demographics, and really what types of ideas are being identified. I'd like to share with you who our 2024 Bush Prize winner was. And so it was Call to Freedom. And so when the selection team was looking at all of the things that Call to Freedom was doing, um, some of the things that came up is, well, who is Call to Freedom? And what are they doing? They're dedicated to bringing healing to these individuals impacted by sex and labor trafficking and commercial sex exploitation by navigating a healing path through their continuum of care model. So they created this continuum of care model that they administer throughout each one of their clients. They collaborate with several different organizations across the state, and they've created this replicable model that can be adapted by other communities. So as you're thinking about the work that you're doing on a daily basis and really thinking, you know, are we being innovative? Are we looking outside the box? Is this something that can be replicated across the state or into other communities within the state? And then Call to Freedom created Marissa's House, which is a 12-unit apartment complex, really giving these human trafficking survivors and their families a safe place to be. And they actually were awarded a certificate for that great work that Marissa's House is doing last year. So this is what the winner looked like, or honoree, I should say, for Bush Prize 2024. I hope that inspires you to be thinking about the work that you're doing and encouraging you to apply. You know, one of the things that you can all do is reach out with any questions that you have prior to applying to any one of these grants. I'd like to share too who those finalists were of the Bush Prize in 2024. You may have worked with them or at least know who they are. So that is Black Hills Works out of Rapid City, Face It Together in Sioux Falls, Lifescape also out of Sioux Falls, One Spirit just outside of Kyle, South Dakota, Love Inc. of the Black Hills, also located in Rapid City, and then Volunteers of the Northern Rockies. So although they are not only in South Dakota, they do have some work in Wyoming as well. They were also a finalist. So just to let you know, those are some of the Bush Prize finalists that we had. So the timeline this year for applying to the Bush Prize is the month of April. Again, closing at noon Central Time, 11 Mountain Time. The finalist selection will take place in August, and then the recipient announcement, I have listed here October. There are a few discussions about what that might look like because each one of the partners in South Dakota, Minnesota, North Dakota, will all be announcing on the same day. So that recipient announcement might change. It might be an October date, but we'll get that updated if there is a change on our website. So keep an eye out on our website for any changes. I'm going to move on now to how to apply, and I hope you're writing down all your questions and we can answer those as soon as we finish, either typing it in the chat or raising your hand when we finish. But I do want to spend a little bit time on how to apply. So the first step I always like to tell folks to go to is our website. I have the website address there, but that has so much knowledge or so much information out there for all of you to look through. So it not only has all of our grant programs listed there, it talks about the information, the deadlines. We talk about the criteria. You have guidelines. There's draft applications. You can download those. We also have lists of all the grants that have been awarded recently. So that's a great place for you to start to learn about our grant programs. And then listed on our website too is how excited we were to move on to go apply. I know many of you worked in eGrant and had experienced maybe a few issues with it timing out and all the things. And so this Go Apply is actually lives in the cloud. And so we shouldn't have any more of those issues. But we moved on to that. We closed eGrant at the end of 24. And so we also created a user guide here for you. So if you go to any one of our pages on our website in the grants field, you're going to see a link to go apply, and you're going to see a link to that user guide. To speak just a little bit more about Go Apply, I've listed the link here, but again, anytime you go to one of our website pages, the link exists there. Once you get in there, and I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to demonstrate how Go Apply works, but I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we're seeing. So the first thing you do need to do is to create a new account for those first-time applicants. And we're hoping that each one of your nonprofit organizations, we only have one account per organization. I know that's been an issue in the past where, there's staff turnover and another account keeps getting created. So it might be that you find and identify somebody within your organization that knows who that account holder is. You can be a submitter or you can be a contributor. And so when we see these come through, we can actually identify, and you can also tell us if you'd like to, I'm going to be the only submitter for our organization. You can have contributors, but they are not going to be submitting the documents. You can add to it, and then the submitter can submit that. We're going to go through the tax ID search here once I demo Go Apply. And we want you to create that profile, a login and password. And probably the one thing that's the hardest for new users is to wait for that permission from South Dakota Community Foundation. So the grant programs are listed under the opportunities currently, and I'm going to show you this, but our South Dakota Fund, NSA, and CSA programs are always visible because they're rolling. So you're going to see those. And when we get out here in just a minute, you're not going to see Big or Bush Prize because they are not open. So keep your eye on our website when these programs open, and then you'll be able to see them once you go apply. I'm also going to talk to you about the in progress, submitted, and organization profile tabs. So let's keep our fingers crossed and see if this will work for us. This is the page that you want to see once you get in to go apply from our website. And this is the logo you want to see. That means that you are in the right place. You're at the South Dakota Community Foundation Grants Go Apply section. So I'm going to click on this. And Stephanie, are we seeing what we want to see?
No. We still see your screen, the presentation screen. We're not
Okay.
seeing the website.
Okay. I am going to stop sharing here for a moment and reshare this page. How's that?
Now we see your website, yes.
Okay, so this is what you want to see, the South Dakota Fund grants. First thing you need to do for these new users is create a new account. By clicking on create a new account, you're going to see, obviously we're in the United States, but the second section of Go Apply is where you want to pay attention. So if you know your EIN here, your tax ID number, you can type that in. If you don't, you can click on this link here. That's going to take you out to the IRS website, and you can type in your name there and it will search for you. So let's say, I just know my name. And so I'm going to type in South Dakota Community Foundation. And you do a search here. There's where you're going to see the information for the group that you want to select. If you're not seeing what you want, you can search again. I pay particular close attention to this, that you are really using your name and not using any abbreviations, however that may look, because this is really going by what the IRS has on file. And so by clicking on this, you'll notice it has our address, that we are 501c3, and we're going to select that. That's opening up another screen where you can put in your organization information and then your personal contact information below. You click on register, and that comes into a mailbox at the foundation. It can take up to a couple days to hear back from us if you are now approved to log in. So I'm going to return to the login, and I'm going to log in here as myself. And what you'll see here, I'm going to start with the organization profile, because if something isn't right there, or let's say something changes, you have an opportunity here to go into this profile and change it to whatever you want it to be. I mentioned the grant opportunities live under this opportunities tab. So that's where all the grant programs that are currently open live. So the community savings account, I talked about applying to community savings accounts, but this is also an opportunity for groups that are in a community and want to apply for a community savings account challenge grant. So let's say that you're in a community that does not have a CSA and you're interested in one. We have over here the phase contact. So you could reach out to Jamie Farman. Jamie can share more information with you about what it is to go into a challenge grant with South Dakota Community Foundation here. It also has her email address there. When you are ready, you're going to click on the View tab. So I want to wait just a moment to do that. We also have our nonprofit savings account and our South Dakota Fund. Now, when you click on this link, it's underneath the guidelines. So you don't want to click on these if you're ready to apply. You definitely want to look at these. If you haven't looked at our guidelines, it will take you to our website, to each one of these areas. It will show you our website and the grant guidelines for each one of these programs. So let's say you're ready to apply for a South Dakota Fund. You click on the view on the far left corner here, and that is going to bring up some other information about what is the South Dakota Fund and what is a letter of inquiry. You see some information here in the summary. You also see a little bit more here in the description. We also have that link to the IRS site to look at any kind of information on your nonprofit you want to see. You also see a contact for me. If you click on this, this will bring up an email for myself. And then the guidelines again. So before you enter into submitting a proposal to any one of our grant programs, we want to give you as much information as we can ahead of time so you can see those guidelines and contact information. We also have here, if you click on this, this is going to bring up a blank letter of inquiry for you to review. It downloads a PDF. So here is the information on our letter of inquiry, some instructions, and then it itself. So you can take a peek at it, any of our applications, anything that has this print blank button is going to open up a blank or a draft letter of inquiry, application, or evaluation. So you've read through everything, you're ready to apply. You can click on this apply button. It's also going to bring up this information. So this is my test that I've been doing for a number of months here, but it's going to bring this up for you as an individual in your organization. Does something need to be fixed? It gives you that opportunity, or no, everything looks fine. We're going to have one more chance to look at instructions. You'll see at the bottom here, we have a save draft or next. That's going to continue on each page. So we want to click on the next button. It's going to open up that PDF of the letter of inquiry. You get to fill in all of this application on your organization and then your information specifically. It's going to make me fill in a few blanks here. It won't take me very long. But I want to let you see the
Hello?
next page. Hello? Did somebody
Oh,
say
sorry,
something?
Ginger.
Just making sure I'm not missing something. Okay, so now here's the next button here. Then it's going to bring you to this page. Now, let's say you have been working on this and you get a phone call or, it's time to leave for a meeting. Just make sure you keep clicking on Save Draft. It will save your information as you keep moving forward. You can go back to the previous page here. And when you're ready, look for this Submit button. When you click on the Submit button, you are done, and it will send you an email saying that your application has been submitted. I'm going to go back here. And I wanted to come up here to the submitted, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I'm just doing a lot of testing with a lot of different things. But once you submit something, it's going to show up in the submitted button up here. And it's also going to say what phase it is and if a decision date has been made yet. Same with in progress. It's also going to give you, and I've got a lot of testing going on here, but it's going to tell you what grant program, the phase, and those types of things. So those are the tabs at the top. This review button that you see here, that is for staff. You will not see a review button because all of your applications that you submit, we actually get to share with those with our review team in Go Apply too. So everything you submit, every attachment, the review team gets to see as well. So that's where that resides. So I think I'm going to end this and stop sharing and get back to my PowerPoint, but I think the next up is any questions that folks may have. And that kind of thing. So while I'm trying to navigate back to that, I'm going to start this back at where we started or where we were and move on to our questions. Look at that. As Stephanie's monitoring the chat, if anybody has a question and wants to raise their hand, feel free to go ahead, and then we'll keep monitoring that. But I do want to share this screen with you too. Hopefully you're seeing what I want you to see. Our contact us page is what I'm on now.
We will get to you, Faith, but I do have one question in the chat here from Carson Walker. He is asking if it would be better to use the organization's main admin email address to ensure communication regardless of staff, since we just have one account in Go Apply.
I guess I need to hear you say that, the first part again, Stephanie, I'm sorry.
Use the organization's main admin email address.
Oh, I see, the email address. You know, that would be perfect if that's what you want to do. You certainly don't have to, but if there's going to be if you know of turnover, if you know of something happening, and if that's monitored on a daily basis, that works just fine. When I go back to talk about the submitter and contributor, that's where that becomes really important. If you want one person to be your submitter, well, you can have one person be your submitter, but you can have several people be a contributor. And if you have that one email, then that works out well for your team as well. And when I might just clarify too, since we're talking about that, when you go into search, if you do know your tax ID number, that is a preferred method to use when you're putting in your account for the first time. When you're creating that account, use that tax ID number if you've got it. I see Faith has a question.
Hello, thank you so much.
Hi.
What a great overview. I really appreciate it. Now, can we, I mean, do we have to be careful of what we apply to? Because if we've received one grant in this category, we can't receive the grant in this category? Or are we eligible to apply for all of them? Or because we received a grant in one of the categories, then that means that we wouldn't necessarily be awarded because we've already received the grant.
Yeah, that is such a great question, and I failed to address that, Faith. I mentioned it when we were talking about the community savings account, but really, because all of our grant programs are so different, you really are eligible to apply to any of them. The South Dakota Fund's ongoing. We've got some deadlines for Big and Bush Prize, but that NSA is also ongoing, as is the CSA. And so you are eligible as a nonprofit organization to apply to any of them. Just keep in mind what that focus is, if it's program or project or what that might be.
And then just one last question. If we receive a Bush Award or a Beyond idea and we apply to Bush directly, is there any conflict there? I
So
believe.
no, there is not. And
Okay.
I want all of you to understand that our Beyond Idea Grant program is a program of South Dakota Community Foundation. And so although we're in partnership with the Bush Foundation, our our review team is making those decisions. We're capturing that. We're assisting you as grant seekers on the front end, on the back end, however that may look for our Beyond Idea grant and our Bush Prize. And then if you go on to apply to the Bush Foundation themselves, it makes, there's no hindrance there either. You can apply to both of us also at the same time. And because they're probably going to be a little bit different, they're community innovation grants and ours are the big grants. So they're all a little bit different.
Okay, it looks like George Larson has a question for you.
Hey there, appreciate the
Hi,
time.
George.
Hey there, appreciate the time going over everything. So both our DBA and our corp name come up under EIN. They're both listed with the IRS. Is it okay just to go ahead and use our DBA Meals on Wheels versus our long, nobody knows corporate name of Western South Dakota Senior Services Incorporated when doing the go apply?
Is that the tax ID number you're using, George?
Yes, the AIN, the tax ID number is
That's
that,
the one you want to use.
and they're both under the tax ID number because they're both registered with the IRS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to use the organization that you typically applying under.
Yeah.
With that tax ID number. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, and then Kelsey Murray has a question in the chat. If our 501c3 is still in process, are we still able to apply?
You are, if you've received the determination letter, we can accept that until you are, that tax ID number is published. As long as you've received that determination letter from the IRS, we can have you move forward. If you aren't to that step yet, you may not apply under your organization name, but there's a possibility you could use a fiscal sponsor.
And Isabel Stadnick has a question. We can't apply to the Bush Foundation directly for the Bush Prize and at the same time to the South Dakota Community Foundation for the South Dakota Fund Grant.
So again, Isabel, thank you for the question. The Bush Prize South Dakota is administered by the South Dakota Community Foundation. So you are applying to us. The Bush Prize South Dakota grant program is different than the South Dakota Fund. The Bush Prize is an award for those organizations that are doing exemplary work in community innovation. The South Dakota Fund is that program and project related expensive work that you have. You can apply to both at the same time. I can stop sharing this. I think you all have our contact information. As I had mentioned earlier, we are here to help you. We are here to answer any questions you have about any of our grant programs. You can send an email. You can set up an appointment to visit with us. We use Calendly, and it's a way for us to shoot out a link to you. You get to pick a day and time that work for you, and we'll list the times that we're available. We try to keep those inquiry calls maybe down to about 20 minutes. But you're more than welcome to, reach out to us that way. And then on the back end, let's say that you haven't received a grant, it was denied. We are more than happy to give you that feedback call too. And usually in the denial letter, we put that link right in there so that you have that link available to you and you can reach out and get that feedback from us. If there's any other questions, perhaps our website can answer some of those as well. Probably the most important piece of this is, moving forward and go apply is where everything is going to live. You create that account, wait for permission from us, then you get to go in. Take a look at our website. There's so much good information out there. Any other questions, Stephanie?
Not that I'm seeing in the chat, and I don't see other hands raised. Oh, Eva raised her hand.
Sorry, just one last quick question. Just so I'm not confusing it. So the Bush Prize Native Nations grant, would I work through directly with the Native Nations partner for that and not the South Dakota, correct? Sorry, I just know there's a lot of branches.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Absolutely. So I shared those partners with you so you were aware of who they were. So the Native Nations, which is Good Relatives Collaborative, they also will be awarding a Bush Prize Native Nations, which is separate from our Bush Prize South Dakota. So they are only focusing with Native Nations in South Dakota, Minnesota, and North Dakota. But you can apply to either one of us.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Oh, and then it looks like we might have one message here. Will you share the PowerPoint with us through an email?
Yeah, well, actually, we're going to put it out on our website along with the recording of this. So that is something Miss Stephanie will be doing here after we conclude today. We'll get that the recording of this out there. We will also put the PowerPoint out there for you to review. And again, you'll see our contact information there, so feel free to reach out. Oh, I think, Teresa, do you have a question? Maybe? I see a hand, but I'm not sure. Nope. Did we get through all the chat, do you think?
It looks like we did.
Okay, well, that concludes our session today. I'm wishing you all the best and reach out with any questions that you have this year. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Stephanie, I was going to stop the recording, but it's not allowing me to. So I think we can just end the meeting for all.
I
Okay.
am